Hey everyone, Adam Brown here, 24 years living with type 1, and I now work as a therapist, supporting people with diabetes in their mental health. And today I want to talk about one of the most common things I see in my practice, which is being hard on ourselves. So lots of folks with type 1 are very self-critical when things are hard in their diabetes. And I want to talk about where this comes from, some ideas around it, and then in this video and the next we'll talk about some ways to get better at being kind to ourselves instead and why that might be useful. So we get a lot of messaging in diabetes about control. Control your diabetes, that's basically the whole agenda we're told at diagnosis, and even if folks don't use the word control, it's sort of implied that that's the project of diabetes. And I think CGM and insulin pumps and these things have been really, really useful. And they also give us this kind of illusion of control. Like everything seems so precise. I get a little data point every 5 minutes. I can hit a button and take a dose of insulin. And so I think many people come into therapy with me feeling like they're not controlling their diabetes, and they should be. And so when things aren't going well, they blame themselves. And one of the stances we take in therapy is that diabetes is not something you control in the same way that we'd use that word, like controlling the volume on your TV. You know, you hit the button, it goes up or down. Diabetes is more like something you manage or balance or carry. So one of my favorite ways to demonstrate this is the garden analogy. So if you think about having a garden, you know, you'd obviously plant things that you want in the garden, hope that they bloom, and also when weeds appear in the garden, which they do, from time to time, pull out the weeds. And of course, making sure there's enough sunlight on the garden and enough water. So a garden is not something you control. A garden is something you tend to. You make sure it has the right conditions to thrive. And this is really how I think about type 1 diabetes. We're tending to it. We're not controlling it. We are creating the conditions for things to go well. And if weeds are growing or things aren't working, then that's a sign to do something different, and that's really useful information. So where does self-criticism come in? Well, I think when folks have this really strong control agenda, it's very common to blame themselves when there's highs and lows. And when they meet with a healthcare provider who focuses on highs and lows, because that's their job, again, it just feels like there's this constant messaging that you're doing something wrong, you need to work harder, you need to do better. And then we internalize that self-talk. And so when a difficult diabetes moment appears, it's easy to be like, it's my fault. I'm not good at this, I'm not taking care of myself, nothing matters, that sort of stuff. And then often from that self-criticism follows behaviors that aren't helpful. And we'll talk more about that. But the alternative is learning to be kind to ourselves, and that is a skill that many folks have never learned or acquired, and so it takes practice and cultivation. And so we'll talk about that in the next video. But I invite you to notice in yourself in a difficult diabetes moment what sort of stuff shows up. Is there irritation? Is there blaming yourself? Is there judgmental thoughts? I'll never get this right. What kind of stuff shows up? And it just as a practice, see if you can get better at noticing that. Thank you.